Hey guys, Hikari here, and today we're going to be talking about chapter 168 of One Punch Man titled Awakening of the Gods, and this chapter somehow was able to top last week's chapter, or the last chapter, in terms of just sheer craziness. The feats that were going on in this chapter were very insane, and somehow, I don't know how, but Murata made this chapter even crazier than the last one. But without further ado, let's just get right into the chapter. The chapter starts off this week exactly where we left off last week, with Saitama and Garo punching each other, but this time we see that the punch that Garo gave Saitama did miss, but Saitama obviously counterattacked with a punch that did hit him, and we see them, just doing a couple punches. He punches Garo into a warp gate, and then that causes Garo to kind of warp behind him, and he's able to instantly counter this. He knows exactly what Garo was trying to do, and he hits him with a punch to the gut, and it hits him very hard. It looks like a hard-hitting punch. After some further fighting, we see that Saitama has already kind of jumped up to a rock that's floating above them, and he uses this to kind of boost himself downward and hit Garo with a very menacing karate chop to the back of the neck, and this instantly flattens Garo onto the floor. Garo then remarks that he's copying my moves, and Saitama starts talking to him saying, what's wrong? You said that you were going to copy me when I was at my strongest. Then he says, go ahead and try. Isn't this the whole point of all of this? And Garo really is on the ropes right now. He starts to remark that he doesn't really get it, that he's counterattacking with just as much power, but the next attack hits even harder, and that he can't keep up at all. And he's saying that, no, he's getting punched, he's hitting Saitama with attacks, but Saitama's counterattacking even harder, just destroying him. And he's saying, I'm getting left in the dust, and we see a little graph of the different powers of Saitama and Garo, and we see that they start to kind of parallel, and then at a certain point it just skyrockets up with Saitama to where Saitama's kind of leaving Garo in the dust, and he's saying that at this rate, one of the punches is really going to kill me. And he says that even now, Saitama was continuing to grow. We see that in the little narrator's box, and he's saying that his rate of growth has kind of gone unnoticed because there hasn't really been anybody that was even nearly on par with his strength, and that suddenly it began to soar exponentially since Garo's power was to really mimic and copy his power levels, so Saitama's able to infinitely go farther past that power level, since we have to remember that he's the only person in the series that has removed his power limiter. He's the only person that's done that, so no matter the situation, he's going to be able to become strong enough to defeat that purpose or defeat that person. He's never going to be able to kind of be contained in terms of power level, and he's always going to be able to rise to the occasion to fight that person. So basically, Garo was fighting a losing battle from the start, since Garo has not removed his limiter, so at a certain point, he started to even out with Saitama, and that was basically his limit, and we see that in the chart. So after a while, Saitama's going to eventually soar past them and just keep rising, and so he's at a point where he can easily one-hit or one-shot Garo, and that is exactly what's going to be happening in the chapter. The narrator's box also says that at this point, the only person that was even able to observe Saitama's strength, which is Garo, is getting completely left behind. And it's after this that we get the most insane feat of power, and I know I said this in the last chapter with Saitama destroying Io, the moon of Jupiter, but this really is the single craziest thing that has happened in One Punch Man and will happen in a lot of different battle manga. We see that Saitama remarks that, oh yeah, you destroyed my outfit, and we see in little black boxes it says there was no longer anybody left to measure what level Saitama's strength had reached, and we see Saitama start to sneeze. He sneezes and Garo ducks the sneeze, but we see that the sneeze was able to completely destroy a huge surface of Jupiter, and it's called a serious sneeze, and it's literally peeled back like a good half of Jupiter, and we see that the core of Jupiter is exposed, and this really is one of the single most insane feats of strength in the series, and this really is a good representation of the fact that there's almost nobody in One Punch Man right now that can easily oppose Saitama. I still think the only person that will even be close to that will be God. In One Punch Man, he's probably going to be able to kind of go toe-to-toe with Saitama, considering if he's something that's, gotten rid of their limiter also, but right now in the series, there really is nobody that can match Saitama in terms of strength. And we have to remember that Jupiter is so many times bigger than Earth, and he was able to peel off half of that with just a sneeze. So you can only imagine if he would have serious punched it. So he's at a level where nobody can really contest him on Earth, and he's never going to be able to fight on Earth. I think we have that down. He's never going to be able to go serious on Earth, or he's going to accidentally destroy the entire planet. After seeing this show of strength, we even see that Garo's like, this is insane. Like, who is this monster? He is calling Saitama the monster, and he's saying that this is a being that shouldn't be allowed to roam free on Earth, which is pretty crazy considering that his whole plan was to become a being that would destroy Earth or kind of put everybody down, and he's calling Saitama the monster. We get another pretty crazy feat of strength here, and some people say that he only teleported Saitama to Earth, which wouldn't really make sense. I'm pretty sure what he did is he saw the sun in his range of vision, and he can seemingly teleport to anything that is in his range of vision using his warps. So he found the sun, he says that it's in his range of vision, and I'm pretty sure he just straight up teleported Saitama to the sun like for a split second and teleported back so that it didn't hurt himself. And he teleports back to Earth, and we see that there was like a big explosion kind of since Saitama probably hit the surface of the sun, and instantaneously Saitama is right behind Garo again, and he's saying that, that move you got there is pretty nifty, and Garo's very confused. He's saying, I sent you flying all the way over there, and Saitama's explanation is that he had a stomach ache and he was holding a fart in, and that he used that fart to kind of propel himself from the sun all the way to Earth where Garo had teleported to. And Garo's so confused. At this point, Garo kind of just gives up, and he gets punched down to the surface of the Earth, and this is kind of the end of their fight right here. Garo starts asking, why don't you go ahead and kill me? Like, what are you waiting for? Just go ahead, do it. And Saitama starts to say that compared to people like you with your quick costume changes or king, he says that he relates the fact that he's not really cut out for this hero thing. He then actually mentions that it was also that kid's final request that I stop you without killing you, and Garo remarks that it's final request. Like, what do you mean? And he looks over and we see that Sario is actually dead. And we see that almost everybody that was affected by that gamma radiation that he was emitting when he first awakened is most likely dead right now. And we see that Sario is just deceased, and this completely causes Garo to flip out. Like, he doesn't know what to do right now. He'd never really kind of thought about the fact that he would actually end these people's lives, and he starts to cry, and it's very sad. And he's saying that it's, my fault, and I was too close to you, and he's saying and trips over a rock, and he's on the floor crying, and he's in a weakened state. He just feels bad for what he did, and the fact that he wasn't really considering a lot of different things whenever he had awakened. Or then remarks that, I'm that ominous future, and this is kind of him realizing that his whole plans was really dumb, and that he should have never gone through with all the things that he did. And Saitama reacts that, you've been acting very weird since you fell from the sky. And he's saying that, did somebody kind of influence you? And Garo's saying that, if they did, it was because my spirit was too weak. Garo remarks that it's laughable that he couldn't become absolute evil, and that the hero that defeated him says that he's not even able to cut out to be a hero. So, he's asking, why couldn't you even just act like one? And he's saying that if you could have just killed me waving around your justice with a smile on your face, you could have gone out like a true evil villain. He then says that the person that he literally wanted to save by changing the world is also dead, so there's kind of no point to whatever he did. And Saitama asked him, you wanted to save him, you weren't just clinging to him for support. And we see that Garo's like, clinging me? He's gonna say, what would you know, getting real mad. And he sees that Saitama still has that power core from Genos that he killed, and he's saying that, is that what you're doing too? Trying to help somebody. It's at this point that Garo asks Saitama to copy his ultimate technique, and he's saying that this is my fist. This is the perfect technique that even I wasn't able to really accomplish or perfect, and he wants to give it to Saitama. And he's saying, watch closely, I'm going to teach you this ultimate technique. And we see that Saitama's starting to try to learn it too, and he gets into a stance where they're sort of gathering energy, and it's at this point that he's saying that, whoa, silence, I'm taking them back, and this is God talking. And he usually always does this as soon as somebody starts doing stuff with his power that he doesn't like, or somebody tries to reveal different powers that he has. So he did this with Homeless Emperor, and he's going to try to do it with Garo. But before he's able to, he's telling Saitama to concentrate, focus, let's try to get this down. And we see panels saying that the two of them were imagining their own inner universes, and that their particles and antiparticles, they were following each other around, spinning, doing a lot of different moves, and they were kind of both merging together to form a perfect equilibrium. And he's saying that, you got to stop me, Saitama, you got to stop that ominous future. And we see that Garo was completely turned into salt, and he was completely done. This was it, and Saitama actually started to travel backwards in time. So we see that his perfect fist was actually a sort of time travel ability, and Saitama was able to go back in time to the original version of the story in chapter 165, I think it is, where Saitama and Garo were first going to start fighting, and Garo had just almost awakened. It's at this point that Saitama completely flattens that version of Garo. He completely goes back and destroys him with just one punch. And he says that, this is the punch that was kind of powered up on Jupiter. So throughout fighting on Jupiter with Garo, he was able to gain the power, to be able to one-shot Garo in this form. And it only took one punch, and this Garo was gone and out. And this is kind of it for him. After he took this punch, the power started to escape from his face, kind of just like how it did in the webcomic. And I'm assuming this is just, him being defeated, so the power is kind of going away from him, and he's not going to be able to fully awaken into the awakened Garo. And we see that the old Saitama kind of merges with that new Saitama from the future. They kind of merge and become like one being again. And after this, we see that Saitama kind of had a wardrobe malfunction. For some reason, his crotch area is just gone. So he had a wardrobe malfunction, but he still has that power core from Genos from before. And we see that Genos is actually still alive. So I'm assuming that this is going to kind of be like a power up for Genos, that he has like 2 power cores now. So he's going to be able to kind of put them together and gain power in that way, which is what I'm assuming, since they purposely showed us the power core again. But that was actually the end of the chapter, and this is a very, very crazy chapter. A lot happened, and this is honestly like kind of the end of the Monster Association. This is kind of how the webcomic ended. Not really, but this is at the point where the webcomic ended with Garo being defeated, and this is the end. And I just want to say that this was a very, very good chapter. This was so insane, and Murata went off with the art and the story. Everything was pretty cool, and I never really expected One Punch Man to kind of go down this route of storytelling, but it was pretty cool. And I just want to know what everybody else thought of the chapter. I thought it was a 10 out of 10. I really did love the ending to this fight, and sometimes I don't like time travel in different manga, but I feel like this was implemented pretty well. It made decent sense, and I really like how it was used in the story. But definitely let me know what you guys thought of it too, though. Did you enjoy the chapter? Did you think that the time travel and everything was done well? And just in general, like, what did you feel about the fighting in the chapter? I thought it was very good. But also, like the video if you liked it, and do subscribe to the channel, since I make a lot of videos like this, a lot of theory videos, a lot of chapter reviews, and I'm going to keep continuing to make them. So I would really appreciate it if you guys liked the video and subscribed. But thank you for watching, and I'm out. Peace.